A little over a year after we got going with Houston Oasis, I was contacted by a woman in Kansas City who said she was interested in secular community, and they were thinking of doing something up there, and she had done some research and found out about us, and we started talking, and we're still talking. And she had the wisdom and the insight and the vision of saying, hey, well, rather than just doing their own thing up there, why don't we join forces? Because, you know, doing stuff together is far better than doing it alone. The principle of community not only works at an individual level, but also at a group level also. So she formed a team up there, launched Kansas City Oasis, which is now a thriving, energetic, amazing secular community that all of you would feel right at home at. I love going up there. It feels like a home away from home. And she is also the president of the new Oasis Network board that we have formed to kind of give structure and guidance to the growth of new Oasis communities around the country. She's no stranger to this community. She's been here before. But now I think we can say she is an official honorary Texan, because yesterday at Buc-ee's, when I was filling up, she was attempting, because we went out to San Antonio to talk to people out there interested in launching an Oasis, and we were at Buc-ee's, and she went off to pick some sacred Texas wildflowers, which I'm pretty sure is illegal, and the gods smote her with fire ants. And so I think, Buc-ee's and fire ants get more Texan than that. So let's welcome our friend and fellow Texan, Helen Stringer.
So as Mike was sharing, I know a lot of you know more of me from my work with Oasis, but my bread and butter is that I work as a professional organizer. I own my own business, which is great because it gave me the flexibility to be doing this kind of stuff. But I, and now my staff of 4 other organizers, we go into people's homes, and also we do some business work as well, commercial work, and we help improve the efficiency and function of the space, depending on whatever that person's goal is. So I literally come in and out of closets on a weekly basis. It's a little organizer joke. So we're not comedians. But this work as an organizer has afforded me opportunities to, I get to see this really profound aspect of life. It's so much more. It has so much more to do with our existence as humanity than it does with stuff. Stuff is like the symptom of it all. So early on as a professional organizer, I worked with, we had this large project with an individual who struggled with hoarding. Now I will say, off the bat, I rarely work with hoarders much anymore, and I can kind of explain that more later. But this particular instance, we had a team, there was 5 of us total, so when we were helping this individual sort through and try to get through all of her stuff, we had staged all these boxes, and we grouped things by like, kind, or function, so that individuals who have a hard time making decisions about things, if we have collected 50 staplers, you can see, I probably don't need 50, maybe you can make do with 5. So that's kind of our strategy with most hoarding situations. If they can see the amount that they have of something, then they can better part with it. So we're doing that. We're in her apartment, this huge hallway just full of stuff, and she took to me, like a lot of my clients do, and so I was working with her one-to-one, helping her look through just a random box of stuff, because we just kind of thrown things into a box, smaller items, and she was giving me like, yes, no, this goes here, this is how I use this. And so we're sitting there, and we've been sitting there for like 2 hours, and I'm just pulling stuff in and out, and I reach in at one point, and I just pull out and I look at my hand, and there is her diaphragm. And she looks at me and realizes her diaphragm is in my hand, and she goes, "Girl, you don't want to know where that thing's been." I think I do, and it's really okay. I've seen everything. I really have. There's very little that would shock me. And it's a little hard also then like categorizing your diaphragm. Like I didn't have a section for birth control, yeah, so I encounter a lot of really interesting kind of random stuff. And so that first little lesson, from now on, I try to look before I reach into people's boxes. Often there's spiders too, so there's other interesting things lurking in the midst. But so my clients hire me to help them with their space, but sincerely, I have so many times where they are teaching me just so much about life. Stuff often reveals some of the most profound truths about life. It also highlights this common shared humanity. So whether you have this desire to keep the goatee hair that you cut off like 10 years ago and put it in a baggie and label it really nicely that says goatee hair from like 2003, which my husband did. I found that in his memorabilia box. I'm like, why in the world did you keep what? You know, because then there's my memorabilia box with like love letters from high school, you know, cute stuff, and then he keeps that. So, but no matter what it is, what we keep, it speaks a lot to who we are and what's most important to us. And so today, I just actually want to share with you, I'm not going to tell you how to get organized. Honestly, I think that would be so boring, because it's really not rocket science. But I want to share with you 4 life lessons that I have learned while working as a professional organizer. Now, this was a really challenging talk to write because my clients trust that I am going to maintain complete confidentiality for them. So, I have stories. I have so many stories that I could never talk about. So I'm done. So, yeah. This is really hard. So I got permission from one client who I knew would be really comfortable with me talking about some of the stuff that he taught me. But do know that this was challenging, and I gave great thought, and I am going to maintain that level of confidentiality for my clients. Often the work that I do, I say, is sometimes more invasive than therapy. Because we're literally like, I have one client who jokes I'm like family because I've been in her underwear drawer. I've been in her underwear drawer. You know, I've been in your side table beds. You know, these side table beds. There's always interesting stuff in there. But they need that trust. So just know that I am working with utmost care to maintain that right now. So my first lesson is show your appreciation. I often work with clients who have just dealt with significant life transitions, and a lot of times that is overcoming or being on the tail end of surviving cancer. And this is one particular instance. I'm going to call her Sue. But this client of mine, as she began to share, that she had just survived cancer and there were other significant transitions in her life, I began to kind of pick up on where she stood on things. Now, I'll admit, when I go into someone's home, based on books, based on what's in the house, I kind of know where they stand, maybe politically, or religiously, and I also know, if I have to be really quiet about my secular work. This is one instance where she started to talk about how she missed community, and how she had tried, I think the UU, and was kind of it just wasn't a good fit. They were, too spiritual-ish, and I'm sitting here, I try really hard actually not to talk about Oasis. It's really hard not to disclose it because it's really near and dear to my heart, but I don't want to lose my clients because for some people it would be a bad deal for them to learn about. And so finally, after she kind of said some other things, my test of the Oasis waters is to say, well, I'm a part of this really great community that's completely secular, and I don't tell them I started it or I lead it because that's a little too intimidating. And so I started to tell her about Oasis, and she just was totally, it struck a nerve for her. And then finally, I told her, I'm like, all right, I lead this, and I started it. And so we just really began to connect and talk about this more. So the next time I came back to work with her, turns out she had Googled my name and had read all of this stuff. And she was sharing with me just, being really kind about how wonderful she thought it was and how, the world really needs this. And, she was just so impressed and all this stuff. And I'm just like, wow, I don't really know how to respond. And then out of nowhere, she begins to take her necklace off, and she kind of struggles to get it off, and I'm wondering, what's going on, and she looks at me and hands it to me. She's like, I want you to have this. And I'm like, you just took your necklace off? Okay. She said, no, this is one of, after surviving cancer, what I realized is that I want to be able to recognize courage and bravery among other women. And she goes, I feel like you deserve this. That, and this necklace had this thing here, it said, with brave wings, she flies. And just dumbfounded. I mean, still to this day, I feel like I don't deserve what she thought, but she recognized something in me. And that moment, that necklace, I'm not a things person, shocking, in a professional organizer. I have very little attachment to stuff. But that necklace, just having another human being think that there was something special about me, or that I had done something, in her eyes, amazing, gave me so much strength. I mean, 2 weeks later, ended up having kind of life circumstances that were very unpleasant. And that necklace literally got me through that. I was like putting that necklace on, I'm like, all right, with brave wings she flies. I'm like, I've got this. And then it dawned on me that I think a lot in our life, we don't appreciate others verbally or in other ways. We're scared to, for whatever the reason. I think we miss out on so many opportunities just to recognize something really great in other people. And so ever since then, every day it's like, well, what can I do to, make someone else smile? It doesn't have to be ever grand, It doesn't you don't have to be the champion of something or, do anything, quite like she thought she had seen in me. But I want you to consider, can we find other ways? This woman, oh, by the way, I didn't mention, so she does this regularly. I think I was number 7. So she always wears this necklace and just is always actively looking to be able to give that necklace to someone. And it was like the most beautiful, incredible thing. And she had been through literal hell, and this is, new way of kind of finding that passion in life. So I encourage you to show your appreciation just like my client, Sue. Next, be 9 again. Have you ever seen the way someone, when they're looking through their childhood memorabilia, how they light up? I don't know about you, but I have this thing for Cabbage Patch dolls. I love the way they smell, and you remember how great they smell? So much so that, I'll find a client's old Cabbage Patch and it's kind of dusty, and I'm just like, oh, I want to. There's it has this. Oh, it takes me back to childhood, where I have to fight myself from them being like, why are you smelling my old dolls? So what's really interesting about our childhood memorabilia is that when we're kids, when you're 9 or late elementary, you're a little less encumbered by what society has told you how to live, who to be. Hormones haven't kicked in yet. And there are things that when we're late elementary that probably would still make us tick today, that would make us kind of spark joy. And there have been some research, a lot of the happiness research that you see going on, talking about not finding your childhood passion. I'm not talking go out and do whatever and be passionate. That doesn't always work out so well. But I think there are elements, pieces from our childhood that we can take that help us know how to find little sparks of joy. I had one client who shared, she's passionate about Boy Scouts, and I actually learned a lot. A lot of my older male clients who were Boy Scouts, it's very inspiring. I wish they were a little more secular so I could put my kids in it, but I won't. But it's very, very inspiring. He shared, we were trying to gather it all because he was going to do a shadow box of all of his Boy Scout stuff. And he shared the story about this kid, I guess, who, kind of like my fire ant story, except for I wasn't gonna go pee in the woods. I don't do that. But this kid wouldn't use the latrines. He would only go out to the woods to relieve himself, number 2. And he, I guess, used poison ivy to clean himself with. See? Maybe throw some fire ants in that one too. And so he jokingly said every time he sees poison ivy, he thinks of this kid who they then called the Phantom Crapper, because he would disappear into the woods and then come back out. And this is my client Ron, who I asked permission to talk about, so I use him by name. But it was really interesting talking with him, because as we went through all this Boy Scout stuff, out of all of these major, really incredible accomplishments in life, that Eagle Scouts, that Boy Scout experience, was what brought him the most joy as an older adult. And we actually got it all together, and he had it all framed in this huge shadow box so that he could just look and recognize that. I think that's another way to spark joy in our lives, is to reflect back on the really amazing time in life. Now, when I was a kid, I really wanted to be a gymnast, an acrobat. I know you're looking at me like, man, she could have done that. So much so when I would practice really hard, I would clear out the living room furniture so I could practice. And the one thing I was trying really hard to do, actually, was two things. One was like a walkover, which is like a handstand, and then you like flip over. It's not even a handspring. I wasn't that skilled. But I would practice that, and I really always wanted to do the splits. Still can't to this day. I used to have dreams. I'd wake up and I'd be like, man, I think I could do the splits, and then reality hits. But I loved it. I absolutely loved it. And the only award I've ever gotten for a physical activity was in a gymnastics meet. I actually placed 6th, so this is in my memorabilia box. This is my pink 6th place ribbon. What's sad is that 6th place was last place, so there were only 6 of us completing in the floor exercise. And I have this wonderful memory of failing forward. Is that how you're supposed to like reshape that? But now as an adult, so I readily recognize, I love Cirque du Soleil. I think it's just so fascinating. I just imagine how wonderful it'd be to be an acrobat. But I'm an adult. I'm fully aware that that's never going to happen. But what is it about? What was it about that gymnastics or what is it about that I find to be so much fun and that I would enjoy? Well, what I've learned now as an adult, it's like I had something about body movement, dance, kind of things like that. So now as an adult, I know, and I readily love doing like highly choreographed like fitness stuff. And that's one of those ways that I've kind of shifted that childhood 9-year-old passion into something that still brings me joy today. Obviously, I'm not like flipping or doing amazing things in tight clothing, like the acrobats in Cirque du Soleil. But I want you to think, so what is in your basement, attic, wherever you store your childhood memorabilia, that would spark that kind of passion, that same kind of interest? And how can you replicate that now as an adult? You have to be a little creative, obviously, with it. Maybe you should consider rejoining that adult baseball league. Maybe you should camp more, take up pottery, all these other kind of hobby things. Do you know there's an adult summer camp, speaking of camping, called Camp No Counselor? That exists for you. So it's a real thing. You're welcome. You should Google that. Not right now, but later. Next. People are more important. Obviously, I'm kind of, using our values, which is our first value. People are more important than beliefs. But I find this to be so true. I encounter this constantly in all of my work. I work with a lot of people who are actually very isolated, lots of loneliness. My client, Ron, that I mentioned earlier, he was a client whom I had the opportunity to work with all of his. I organized every single space in his house. And then we moved on to his family history and all of his family memorabilia, which was almost, 300 years of stuff. He had a lot of stuff. So his family settled in like rural Kansas. Really fascinating, interesting stuff. But with his own life, so he was a retired Episcopalian priest. Now, at that time, I'm come out of an evangelical background, so I don't know much about Anglicanism. So we started to connect on this, and most of my clients, like I've said before, we end up talking quite a bit. Stuff elicits stories and thoughts and ideas on stuff, and so I started to learn more about his, experience in building community as a priest, an Episcopalian priest, very different from the other priests. I learned that too. And what I found so intriguing was, I was now a secular person at this point working with him. And as he began to reveal, all these stories of leading community, I began to realize more and more, I'm like, gosh, I'm missing out on that. Not only am I missing out on that, it's very inspiring. What he was able to do throughout this work as a priest, which really was wonderful. I know that there's sometimes hard feelings when it comes to religion, but what he was able to do for people, and they're highly progressive, might I add, is really beautiful and incredible. And actually, my conversations with Ron heavily influenced my decision to go forward with starting some type of secular community, and then hence me standing before you today. What was really cool is that this particular client of mine, we had finally, I hadn't told him about Oasis, but he knew I was like a humanist or I was secular. We'd gotten that far, and so he had just returned from a lunch with his retired clergy. And I've actually talked to this group now about Oasis. Very intimidating. They were wonderful, but it was scary. You feel like you might be walking into like a lion's den, but that wasn't the case. But he had returned from one of these mini lunches that they have on a monthly basis, and he was like, I said I should tell you. It's like they're talking, someone in Kansas City is gonna start an atheist church. Have you heard about that? Oh yeah, I was like, I've heard of that. So and I'm like, well, and we're sitting at this table because we had all his pictures lined out and we're sorting and we'd always talk, and I was like, oh, I'm starting that. Like, not only have I heard about it, but it's me, And so it became this really awesome thing where he then took total interest and was super on board with what I wanted to do with building secular community, because he got it. He understood full well how important it is to have community and people in your life, more than I think most people would readily recognize. And he actually became one of the first and pretty significant donors to our crowdfunding campaign. I've actually had him speak at Kansas City Oasis as well. Wonderful individual, and we still chat today, hence he gave me permission to talk about this. So just know, people are so much more important than the stuff in your house and anything else. You have to value it. Community is really, really important. Lastly, this is Ron at one of his churches, the guy in the middle, obviously with the collar. I've organized, oh my gosh, I've worked for priests too. It's weird to organize the little things, the secrets, I guess, they don't know that I have. Lastly, this is the biggest one. And I personally struggle with this the most. So I'm sure everyone likes to put in, so I'm a professional organizer, and the assumption is that I'm type A, everything has its place, and I'm rigid, and everything has to be perfect. And to be quite frank, I don't see myself as such. Maybe it's because I think I've come a long way, because I'm so old now and wise. Please catch my sarcasm. But I have this unique opportunity on a regular basis to see people's lives in one short blip. It's just, I see often people's baby photos, to hearing stories of their childhood, to adult, and so on. And you get this, it just was this reminder that this goes really fast. Really, really fast. And those moments, like, this morning when I'm like preparing for this and I'm kind of freaking out in my head, and in reality I'm like, well, this will just be, one of those random moments in the chain of events of life, and I'm missing out. I'm missing out on the right now. So I have to remind myself constantly of this idea of being here now. Life is a sequence of moments all called now. And we have all these photos of these moments that we, reflect back on, which can be wonderful and beautiful. But in the grand scheme of things, I want to encourage you to just, right now, I'm sure you might be thinking about where you're going to lunch, what you're doing later on, how you're not celebrating zombie Jesus, and so, sorry, I went there. Sorry. But I think it's really important that we find ways to recognize this. So Ron, back to my client Ron, as we went through his family stuff, so he had saw all these pictures, a lot of the little 10 picture, they're literally, it looks like 10, it's probably made of something else, I'm sure someone can correct me. It's metal, pictures on metal. But these were some of his family photos. So they were settling into rural Kansas. And I didn't have the time to ask him again, because there were so many stories that just kept coming as we went through all of these photos. This is a schoolhouse. I think the teacher was part of his family. And then his family, a lot of them were entrepreneurs. So it's really interesting. And I can see the same, and because my client Ron has started a few other businesses on the side. And the genetics of that kind of stuff are really fascinating. So these were some of their businesses they had started. I always thought this one was funny. I can't remember what the story was behind it, so obviously you're welcome. I remember, if I recall actually, I think she literally was a policeman. Her name was. So here's Ron as a baby, and this is kind of where like you get that like full scope picture, and just life flashes by really fast. His school days, and he and his brother, high school. This is him in the center here with his staff. and then today, and you just see like it's just gonna fly by. You know, you hear it a lot, especially when you have kids and you feel like sometimes some days are just really bad, you know, but it all goes by really fast. And I think finding ways to cherish the moment here and now are of utmost importance. I want to play a video. I think that's where. This song has really struck me lately, especially as I have clients who are, I'm gonna go full screen here. Let's push play. But I want to share this with you. I feel like it kind of summarizes where you can see, you know, just how short life is. And as a secular person, more than ever, I want to make the most of this right now. It's all in my worldview right now. This is probably it. That's how I think. And so how do I make this the most of it? And this is a really good reminder. Goes by really fast. And so I want to challenge you today. Find ways to appreciate other people. Be 9 again. People are definitely more important than anything else that we have, and most importantly, be here now. Thanks.
How did you get into organizing? Yeah, that's an interesting question, yeah.
A friend told me to, so just like the shortest story I can kind of say is that, so my husband and I, we adopted from foster care. We were foster parents and then we adopted. But when you go through that process, you have a caseworker who does your home study to make sure you're not a crazy person. And so she got to know me really well and ended up leaving that nonprofit work and falling into the professional organizing thing, and they were looking for organizers, and she's like, you want to do this for fun, like on the side? And that's when I got into it and realized I really like it, I'm really good at it, you know, and then that company folded and I went on my own, so. Mm-hmm.
I was just wondering, other than accidentally grabbing things that you really didn't want to put your hand on, what is like the most difficult part of your job as far as like dealing with people?
I don't know. I guess it depends on what you mean by difficult. You know, people's attachment to stuff is different across the board, so making sure that I meet their expectations, because that can be different. So if I have someone who like wants to drastically improve a space, but they will get rid of nothing, and I can't, you know, most, at least in the Midwest, we have lots of space. Our, you know, home costs are pretty cheap, and so you can find, there's, you know, room, but if you live in like New York in a studio, you know, there's physics, so I can't make things fit into a space that's just not going to accommodate. So sometimes those, but I mean, in reality, I think sometimes the most, what's most challenging for me is feeling like I wish I could help them so much more than just with their space. You know, it's kind of rude for some where I'm like, you know, when I want to tell them like, you know, make some friends or, you know, get out more, you know, because I notice a lot of them carry a lot of shame. A lot of my more extreme clients, I have clients that are just average people who are like, just help me with this room, and we do, and it's easy. But yeah, I wish, like I had a hoarding client. We used to have a contract with the state of Kansas with the first company that I co-owned, and we saw some really, really sad situations. So the state would actually, believe it or not, Kansas has a small budget to help people if they're going to lose their children, or if there is a senior or an older adult who it's not a safe living situation. And we encountered this home where she obviously was not mentally healthy, and she had actually neatly stacked, this is kind of gross, so this is where you see, this is more of a hazmat issue, but she had like neatly bricked in her entire bathroom from like the small row bathroom with used Depends, like, but she had nicely stacked them, and then a whole bedroom full. And you know, it's one thing to know, like, yeah, that sounds horrible and gross. And we didn't work. I can't. It's a hazmat. It's dangerous. But that's heart-wrenching. This woman lived there alone. She had her little couch, and that was it. You know, and her TV. That's always usually kind of a lot of the hoarding situations. And they're completely alone, and it's just heart-wrenching. Yes, like where's family? Or you know, I'm sure there's reasons they've pushed them out, but it's just that's more heart-wrenching than anything else. Like I wish I could help them. It's not that simple.
Great. Thank you so much. Let's give Helen another round of applause.